I don't normally do this at the beginning of a video, but if you have watched more than 2 of my videos and you like my content, please click the subscribe button and the like button. It doesn't cost a thing and it helps me out a lot. So with that said, let us begin. In December of 1993, Marie Kilmartin, 35, would arrive home from a Christmas party at the local daycare centre where she volunteered. When she was dropped off by her 2 friends, she received a phone call, left her house again, never to return. This is the story of her disappearance. Portlaoise is a large town in County Laois. It is located in the South Midlands in the province of Leinster. It is a commercial, retail and arts centre for the Midlands. It has excellent restaurants and buzzing bars. But I guess when it comes to my channel, my watchers of my videos will be more familiar with Portlaoise Prison. It is a closed high security prison for adult males, and it is the longest running prison in the Irish prison system, having been built in the 1830s. Marie was originally from Ballinasloe in County Galway, and she was the daughter of Fred and Rose Kilmartin, who were owners of the Ford dealership in Ballinasloe in County Galway. She moved to Portlaoise in 1980 after her father helped her buy a house there. Marie got pregnant in 1979 and was sent to a mother and baby home. When her daughter was born, she was forced to give her up for adoption to another family member. This led to Marie suffering from depression, and she was moved to a mental hospital in Portlaoise. Here she would meet a nurse, Patricia Doyle, and they would become firm friends for the next 13 years, even living together in the house that Marie bought. Marie was not the type to go out alone. She lived with depression and a mild form of agoraphobia, which made leaving her house difficult. A large part of her anxieties included men and the dark, but moving to Portlaoise seemed to have settled her for the most part. She grew comfortable with the people she worked with, and the environment at the Senior Citizen Centre suited her. She felt needed. Because of Marie's anxieties, she would never walk home alone, especially in the dark. She would always get the bus or have a friend drop her home. This was the case on Thursday, the 16th of December 1993. Marie was dropped home by fellow volunteers after the Christmas party at the Senior Citizen Day Centre. She was invited to continue the Christmas party celebrations at a local pub, but she refused. Her friends were not surprised by her refusal, as they knew what she was like. The friends that dropped her home sat in the car and watched to see her go into her house and shut the door. It was late evening at this time, around 4 p.m, and already dark out. Once Marie was safely inside the house, the 2 friends left. This would be the last time they'd see Marie alive. By 6 p.m. that evening, Patricia arrived home to the house in darkness, which she thought was unusual. She half expected to see Marie home, but also knew she was at the party earlier in the day, and thought, even though unlikely, that Marie decided to continue the Christmas celebrations with her colleagues. But she did note that the kettle was plugged in and the immersion was on for a bath. Anyone watching from Ireland would know what an immersion is, and that it was a great contention in any Irish household, especially back in the day. If there was anything that would start a row in an Irish home, it was who left the immersion on. An immersion might also be known to some as a water heater, and it was very costly to run, and we always forgot to turn it off, hence the rows in the house. Patricia also noted that shopping bags containing food were also hanging on the back of one of the chairs in the kitchen, still unpacked, and Christmas presents were left there also, and the alarm was set in the house. Patricia was awake all night, expecting Marie to come home, but there was no sign of her. She said in interviews she was annoyed by the time morning came round. She said Marie was very dependable, and she couldn't believe she would stay out all night and have her worry about her, that she had a routine and stuck to it normally. Patricia also said that it was normal for them to leave each other notes to let the other person know where they were and what time they'd be home. No note was left. When Patricia went into work, she rang one of the ladies that was to give Marie a lift home the evening before. She told Patricia that they had dropped Marie home at around 4 p.m. and hadn't seen nor heard from her since. Patricia then rang the Gardaí, and when they arrived at the house to speak to her, they took Marie's disappearance serious straight away because of her mental health issues. The landline in the house was checked, and it was discovered that at 4:30 p.m. a call was made to the house, half an hour after Marie had been dropped home. This call lasted over 2 minutes and was traced to a phone box close to a facility where Marie spent time as a patient and near Portlaoise Prison on the Dublin Road. Also, Marie's landline was ex-directory, and so the person that made the call to the house obviously knew the number and therefore knew Marie. It is thought that soon after the call, Marie left the house. Patricia was in a way relieved at this news, as she knew it would have to be someone that Marie knew and trusted to bring her out of the house, and that she must be safe. Patricia would also say that on the Friday night her sister was to come and stay, and they were to have a party at the house, which they were all looking forward to. She said Marie was in good form. She had planned to go home to Ballinasloe for Christmas. She had her presents bought for the family and her bag packed in the bedroom, ready to go. So if she was leaving of her own accord, all she had to do was grab it and go. It would then come to light that 2 women that knew Marie had met her on the Friday morning. Both these women knew her very well. The first sighting was outside the health centre outside Portlaoise town. As the woman got into her car, she noticed Marie standing in the corner of the car park. She rolled down the window of her car and she said hello to Marie. Marie answered her back with a quiet hello. The woman said she was alone and didn't seem to be in the best of form. 2.5 hours later, Marie would be seen by another woman that knew her. She met her at Crazy Price's supermarket. She had been shopping there and she heard her name being called, and when she looked around it was Marie. The woman went over to her and described Marie as very upset, nervous, and her voice was shaky. She was all muffled up in a scarf and coat. Marie asked the woman to go with her, and the woman said she couldn't, as she was in a hurry. So the woman went and left her there. Nothing is known what happened to Marie after this, or where she was from the time the first woman saw her and the second woman, or where she was the night before. By now the family and friends were concerned about Marie's welfare. Posters and appeals were made by Gardaí and local churches for any information of her whereabouts. A full-scale missing persons investigation was carried out with no sign of her. Marie's case was also put on Crimeline, a TV show here in Ireland. They particularly appealed to people that might have seen someone around 4:30 p.m. on Thursday the 16th of December in the phone boxes where a call had been made to Marie's house. A hitchhiker phoned the helpline and told them that she had seen a man at the phone boxes at that time and described him as around 30 years of age with dark hair. The Gardaí put out a fresh appeal for this man to come forward, but he never did. By New Year 1994, there was still no sign of Marie. Search parties were organised and Marie's family did interviews, asking people to be on the lookout for her. Farmers were asked to check their sheds and fields, and anyone out walking to be vigilant of their surroundings. 6 months later, on Friday the 10th of June, as the summer weather began to show itself, a local man, Tom Deegan, a prison officer, was out on a bog where his son was cutting turf in an area known as Pym's Lane, north of Mount Mellick on the Laois-Offaly border, around 20 kilometres from Portlaoise. It was an isolated area only known to locals for cutting turf and used as a dumping ground. It was around a mile in from the main road. He brought his 2-year-old daughter along with him, and as she was wandering on the bog, Tom, holding his daughter's hand, wandered with her. He spotted what looked like the wheel of a pram sticking up from a bog drain, and on closer inspection noticed something else that resembled a boot and a leg. Shocked, he brought his children home and told his wife what he had seen. They agreed he should return to the site. It was still bright at 9 p.m. when he returned to the laneway to the bogland. He again saw what looked like a leg, and moving closer identified a second boot and leg. He immediately went to raise the alarm. That night the Gardaí arrived at the bog and saw the 2 feet, then the rest of the body beneath the water, covered with an old pram and parts of a gas heater, and a concrete block had been laid on top of the body in order to keep it submerged in the dark, murky waters of the drain. It was clear that the body had been there for some time. The next day, Saturday, the 11th of June, Dr. John Harbison began the post-mortem. It was already clear that the body was of a woman from the clothing, and Gardaí strongly suspected it was Marie. 2 rings were removed from her right middle finger, including a claddagh ring. He then removed a 9-carat gold cameo ring, and from her left hand he removed a sovereign ring. Marie loved her rings, and her friends said you'd never see her without them. A guest watch and a heart-shaped locket were also removed from the body. Marie was also known to wear scapulars around her neck, and 1 shoelace-type cord was found. Initially, Marie would be identified by her jewellery, but later it would be confirmed through dental records. Dr. Harbison concluded that Marie had been manually strangled to death, with no other signs of trauma to her body. He said that she was found fully clothed, and therefore he believed she had not been sexually assaulted. Whoever killed Marie had been meticulous, planning not only how to get her out of her house under false pretenses, but they also had an isolated spot earmarked. While a clear motive was difficult to establish, the evidence suggested the killer knew Marie. When the body was found and not yet identified, many files of missing women from around that time were brought forward in the hopes of establishing if the body was one of the missing women. Imelda Keenan, who was from Mount Mellick and went missing also in December 1993 from Waterford. Annie McCarrick, an American who had gone missing from Dublin in March 1993. Eva Brennan, who went missing from Dublin in July 1993. And of course Marie, who went missing in December 1993 from Portlaoise. Marie's funeral took place on the 14th of June in St. Michael's Church in Ballinasloe. Thousands of people attended the church, and many stood outside when it reached capacity. The community had been affected not only by Marie's tragic killing, but were also reeling still from the death of Patricia Gallan and Father Joe Walsh, still unsolved at that point. The local priest would say at that time they had 3 people from the parish murdered and no one held accountable. People in the area would leave their doors unlocked, but now people had their doors well and truly bolted. People were fearful. 2 weeks after Marie's body was found, 2 arrests were made, a man in his 20s and a man in his 50s. They were questioned for 12 hours and released without charge. A week later, the Gardaí assured the family that the investigation was not being scaled down, and they still had several leads in the investigation. On the 28th of July 1994, the inquest into Marie's death was opened, but because it was an ongoing investigation, the inquest was adjourned until November. But that date came and went, and soon a full year had passed since Marie had first disappeared. Very little was being reported in the press. In June 1995, a year after Marie was found in the bog, a new inquest was held finally. Dr. Harbison gave evidence that Marie was likely strangled. He also concluded that Marie most likely died not long after she was last seen. Tom Deegan also gave evidence of finding Marie's body on the 10th of June 1994. The Gardaí also gave evidence of how the body was recovered and brought to Tullamore Hospital for a post-mortem. Patricia Doyle, Marie's housemate, also gave evidence, as did the other witnesses that had seen Marie on the Friday. The jury returned a verdict of murder. The coroner expressed his sympathy to the Kilmartin family and Marie's friends and neighbours. The Kilmartin family expressed their thanks to the coroner, Dr. Harbison, the jury, Gardaí, and the people that helped search for Marie. After the inquest, a fresh appeal was made to a man that contacted the Gardaí on the 16th of June 1994 to reach out again, but nothing would come of this. In November 2005, 11 years after the murder of Marie and marking the 10-year anniversary of Jojo Dullard's disappearance, the Gardaí said they were reviewing Marie's case among others. Thousands of leaflets were distributed in the Leinster area, not only outlining Marie's case, but the case of Antoinette Smith, who went missing in July 1987 and her body was found in the Wicklow Mountains. Patricia Doherty, who went missing in December 1991, whose body was found in the Wicklow Mountains. Annie McCarrick, who went missing in March 1993, who is still missing. Eva Brennan, who went missing in July 1993, who is still missing. Imelda Keenan, who went missing in December 1993, who is still missing. And Jojo Dullard, who went missing in November 1995, who is still missing. Fiona Pender, who went missing in August 1996, who is still missing. Ciara Breen, who went missing in February 1997, who is still missing. Fiona Sinnott, who went missing in February 1998, who is still missing. Deirdre Jacob, who went missing in July 1998, who is still missing. Claire Boylan, who went missing in March 2003 and who is still missing. It also goes back to 1971 when Una Linsky went missing and her body was found in the Dublin Mountains, and I know there are many more if I dig deep enough. Up to 2005, a €10,000 reward was offered on each of the cases. Crime Stoppers offered this reward, and to this day in 2023, no information has led to bodies being found or justice being served. Robert Howard, who was Irish and based in the Midlands at the time of some of the women going missing, was interviewed by Gardaí. He was in Newcastle in the UK serving life for the killing of Hannah Williams in 2003 in London, where he had lived at the time. He was also the prime suspect of Arlene Arkinson's murder in Castlederg in 1994, whose body has never been found. By the end of 2005, no significant progress was made with Howard in connecting him with Marie's murder or any other women that went missing. He died in 2015. In December 2006, a new campaign would begin, not down to the Gardaí or Crime Stoppers, but by someone who was very close to Marie, her daughter Anya. Anya, up until now, had been very absent in finding out what happened to her mother, and there was a reason for this. Anya, like I said, had been adopted as a baby by extended family members, who Anya has not disclosed to this day in order to protect the people that raised her. She would be 13 years old when, unknowing to her, she attended her mother's funeral. She would recall a woman, Marie's best friend, hugging her and telling her how sorry she was for her loss. Anya thought this strange, as to her, Marie was someone she had met 4 to 5 times in her lifetime and was a distant relative. Even though Anya knew at a young age she was adopted, it wasn't until she turned 20 that she learned from a cousin who her mother was. When she confronted her parents, they indeed told her that Marie was her mother. It was then that everything clicked into place. Anya would say when Marie disappeared, it was a very strange time. During a visit to the home place, she felt intuitively that something was very wrong and that Marie was dead. She said her family were very closed and she learned very early on not to ask questions. People wanted silence. They did not want questions to be asked, and I often wondered about that, she said. She said it was like being part of the Truman Show. Everyone knew the truth and kept the secret. She was the last to know. Anya moved out of home after her leaving cert and is now living in Dublin, where she has started a new life. As of 2007, she has not been in contact with her family since 2005. She spent Christmas with her best friend in Dublin. Her friends are her family now. She says without them she wouldn't be able to keep going. Anya said she didn't have a happy upbringing, if she was to be honest. She always felt like an outsider in the family, but not with her father. He was the only one I felt loved by, she said. But I don't want people to feel sorry for me. This is about her mother now, and not her. Anya admits after finding out the truth about her mother at 20 years old, she fell apart and was a total mess for a while. People that knew Marie, though, rallied around her and told her that Marie was a lovely, loving and caring person, She was great crack, a woman that loved to sing and dance and had many friends in her circle. Anya also recalls that as a child, when she met Marie, Marie's face would light up. Not knowing the significance of these meetings back then, it's only now Anya can appreciate the interaction and how heartbreaking it must have been on Marie to have your daughter standing in front of you and not being allowed to say anything or acknowledge the true nature of the relationship. I can only say on a personal note that these types of families have a lot to answer for, along with the backward Catholic mentality who would help separate a child from its mother so the family could save face with the neighbours and not be made a show of. Anya says she's a very good idea of who her mother's killers are, and she has given this information to Gardaí in Portlaoise, but she accepts that it will be a long road. Anya, in my opinion, is like many other families of people who have gone missing or have been murdered. They know the truth but cannot say it as they don't have solid proof. So instead they must work hard to find the proof and live in the hope that the Gardaí will take on board what the family know and use the information. Gardaí need to continue to question people that the families direct them towards and leave no stone unturned. It will be 30 years this December, and Anya is no closer to finding answers to her mother's death, just like Imelda Keenan's family, who went missing the same month Marie did. In April 2007, the National Crime Unit began a review of Marie's case. All the evidence that had been gathered was re-examined, and people who had given statements were to be re-interviewed. Several officers were assigned to the case on a full-time basis. More information was given by those who had already given statements. Anya would give an interview to the newspapers, stating that the two original people that were questioned at the beginning of the investigation were still the two main suspects, the 20-year-old man and the 50-year-old man. She said that two people helped the perpetrator create an alibi for the night Marie disappeared. The theory of what the Gardaí thought happened was also outlined. Marie was taken somewhere on the night of the 16th, and something was done to her. She was attacked or threatened in some way before she was returned home to Portlaoise. It was thought the following day Marie was sought out again and taken away, this time killing her in an effort to make sure she didn't report what had happened to her to the Gardaí. After 8 months of work, the Gardaí were in an advanced stage of the investigation, and another appeal was made. On Monday, the 22nd of September 2008, 3 people were arrested in Portlaoise in connection with the killing of Marie. A 42-year-old man and a couple in their 60s were brought to Tullamore Garda Station. One was questioned about the killing, and the other 2 were questioned about withholding information. The Gardaí would not comment on whether they were related to each other, nor would they admit that this was a breakthrough in the case. The newspapers reported that they were related, that the 2 older were a couple and the woman had never been brought in for questioning before, whereas the 2 men were back in 1994. All 3 were released the next day, and Gardaí said they were preparing a file for the DPP, but nothing came of it. In 2019, the Gardaí applied to the courts to get tapes of interviews of the chief suspect to have them transferred from VCR to CDs. The Gardaí needed the judge's permission to break the seals of evidence in order to do this. The judge granted this permission. Again, nothing has happened since then. It was reported in newspapers that Gardaí's efforts were being hampered because there was no forensic evidence found on Marie's body, and they didn't have the actual location of where Marie was murdered. Also, the Gardaí lacked motive. Robbery and sexual assault had been ruled out. Anya feels she is being blocked by her family and the Gardaí in finding out what happened to her mother. She has even made a complaint to GSOC, which is the Garda Síochána Omnibus Commission, about the handling of the case. Anya to this day is reaching out and asking people for help in solving the murder of her mother. So if anyone has any information, please do the right thing and contact the Gardaí. Rest in peace, Marie.